Good morning, everybody. We are going live today with our very special guest, Gail Williams. Gail Williams is the professor of horn at Northwestern University, and she is also a former member of the Chicago Symphony. Gail is a really good friend of mine. Let's go online with Gail here. And yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation. Hey, Gail, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Hey, wonderful to see you.
Is this okay?
So first of all, we have a lot of questions from people that wrote in. They asked their questions to you, and one of the nicest questions is from a student of mine. She went to, I think, University of Colorado Boulder, and then I think she's been on the audition circuit. But she says when she watches you play Mahler 5, there's a video of you on YouTube playing Mahler 5.
Yeah.
And she basically says that you're her inspiration for posture. And like that's her inspiration. She says it looks like the horn is just easy to hold. She says it looks like and efficiency, sound. She just kind of models her playing after you in that Mahler 5. And I just thought that was such a really nice thing for someone to say, that they're like, they watch how you hold the horn as well as how you sound. But that's like, I don't know. I feel like that's such a gift that there are videos of you playing online.
Well, that's something I've actually worked hard at.
Really?
Yes. Because I feel if I can play without tension, that's going to be part of it. Part of it's posture.
Yeah.
And not being very tall, and chairs aren't always the easiest things to sit in.
Yeah.
That I think you have to be very comfortable in holding the horn and bringing the horn to you. And that's my favorite phrase. You have to bring the horn to you. You can't go to the horn. You can't be turtle, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's bringing the horn to you and having, I've done a lot of Alexander technique.
Okay.
And John Hennis really helped me with the idea of, lifting from your back and you're bringing your elbows forward, and it's the triceps, not the biceps. And that certainly helps to bring the horn to you.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely, I subscribe to that 100%, but I think, I've maybe seen you play, and I've, just heard you play as well. And I'm like, hold on a sec. That sound is you've got a huge sound, and you're not the largest person. And you can also play it as loud or as soft as anybody I know. And so I think for me, that clued me in. I was like, wow, okay. Now if I can just emulate that, then that means that I can, maybe get a wider range of my dynamics, and I can also have more endurance and, ultimately not get hurt and have a longer career, right?
Well, that's just efficiency, and that's use of air that, that I got from very basic beginning lessons with Mr. Covert to when I was playing with the CSO and taking lessons with Mr. Jacobs.
Oh, man. Could you talk a little bit about some of those lessons you had with Mr. Jacobs?
Oh, boy. Where to start? I have many, many memories. My very first lesson, I remember him saying, take a big breath, use this machine, find out your air capacity. And he kept saying, no, my dear, you must be doing this all wrong.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And so he had me take an inhale and exhale into that machine. And no, my dear, you're doing this all wrong again. So over time, he finally said, well, you have 2.8 liters of air, and that's what I have, and I play the tuba. So it doesn't make any difference how much you have, is what you do with it.
Yes.
And so he was always, I don't have it here. All my breathing little things, except a couple things here, are over in my studio at Northwestern. So I'm kind of lost without my tools. But, making a piece of paper move with freedom, just make it go. It's the same thing. So.
Yeah. Wow. I see Mr. Jacobs as kind of one of those teachers who really shaped not only just his students, but helped shape the whole sound of the brass section in Chicago.
Yeah.
Everyone knew he was the guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, he was like one of the masters of breathing, one of the masters of physiology, just how the body works. He knew how everything worked here physically. And then also, I mean, he just had this concept of like, simplicity, right? Like take in the air and then
Yes.
sing.
Yes. But he didn't like you to kind of figure this out.
Yeah.
Interesting. He'd say, don't overdo this. Just blow. And didn't want you to free buzz, nothing. And he would say in a master class, I would go, he gave many master classes at Northwestern, and I attended many of them. And he would look in the audience and say, well, I don't believe in free buzzing, and I know there's somebody up there that does it. And you kind of duck a little bit. But he didn't really want you like know where that E is. He didn't want you to do that.
Huh.
He wanted you to just blow and taste that note.
Wow.
And I think that's the difference between tuba and horn, personally.
Yes.
Because I did an awful lot of natural horn playing in a couple different ensembles down in this Chicago while I was still in the orchestra, and Norm Schweikert played second. Because he had a beautiful Raoult natural horn with all the crooks.
Yeah.
And we would go and play Brandenburg or, some Telemann or Mozart Symphony or whatever before Friday afternoon concert. And I always felt like I was a little bit more precise on that Friday because I knew where everything was because of the natural horn.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. And what do you think the natural horn kind of did for your playing? I mean, obviously it
trains your ear a lot more, but you better know what partial you're going to play on, or you're messed up good. Yeah. But I think it just made it a little bit more. I don't want to say exact. I don't want to say that, but I just feel like I knew exactly where that note was.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's no resistance on the natural horn, right? There's not like all the valves. There's not all the weight. It just feels like you can just kind of blow, and you're like, oh, there it is. It just feels more simple. But it also, it's like it kind of clarifies in my mind when I play the natural horn. I'm like, oh, this is where this partial is. Okay, this is where this note is. This is how it feels without the resistance of the horn.
Yes.
So we have a couple quick hellos in the audience today. We have Haley Hoops, Haley horn too. Haley's my good friend from the Dallas Symphony, second horn out there, and just a student of Gail's. Love Haley to death. We both have some great Haley stories that we can share.
We won't share right now.
No, just we love her to death, absolutely. And then we've got Jennifer Gunn, who's the piccolo player from the Chicago Symphony. Jennifer is
Hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, just one of the stars of the Chicago Symphony. One of my favorite, players.
Yes, for sure.
Yep. And then let's see, Samuel Hansen, and Samuel's from Lyric Opera.
Right, he's fourth. Yeah.
And AF Horn says, AF Horn 123. My mentor Herb Spencer always spoke highly of you. So excited for this chat.
Herb Spencer, taught horn for many, many years at Bowling Green University.
No kidding.
Yes, but he was a graduate student my freshman year at Ithaca College. Yeah. He and my teacher had been at Eastman together. Yeah. And then Herb went into the Coast Guard band because of the draft and all that was going on.
Yep. Yeah.
So he spent years there playing, and then he came back to Ithaca to get his master's with Jack.
No kidding.
So to have that role model as a 17-year-old, and I hadn't had any lessons yet, to have those people around me, it was a pretty amazing studio.
All right, so I have to back up to what you just said. You said you were 17, you hadn't had any horn lessons yet?
Well, I grew up in a farming community in New York State on a Holstein farm, and my mom was a music teacher, K through 12, vocal music.
Okay.
And we had a town band, and we had a high school band, but our band director was there, and he had all of us. Sorry, my dogs are. Somebody must be at the door because they're both going nuts.
Amazon.
Yeah, they don't. No one leaves very much stuff on my front porch.
I wonder why.
You have this 80-pound shepherd coming at you.
Yeah.
But I had a band director that you had 10-minute lessons every week. That's it.
Oh, wow.
And he basically would say, why don't you work on this solo? Or at the solo competition in New York State as a student to get into all county and area all state and all state. It's just something you did, you know. And my mother had a rule that we all had to play different instruments. And where I'm from, there were no double reeds. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was a blessing. I don't know.
Wow.
No strings. No strings. So my father played sousaphone, so luckily I didn't have to, you know, play the sousaphone. And my mother was a percussionist. And my brother played clarinet, and another brother played trumpet. So that didn't leave for much, you know. Yeah, and I wanted to play the flute, and they were all gone by the time they got around to W in the 5th grade. So there was a horn, and I'm left-handed. So my mother said, why don't you play the horn? But probably my mother was my best teacher.
Really?
Oh, sure. Because she taught, you know, we would be driving in the car, and she would, being a percussionist, she was always into rhythm. And she would tap out a rhythm on the steering wheel. And we had to repeat it. And if we got it wrong, we got to do the dishes at grandma's.
Oh my gosh.
So, and then she would sing a little song, and we'd have to repeat it. So we were doing ear training back before I knew what ear training was. It's just what it was, a game.
Wow. And that's, I think, the best way to teach, right? I think, like, still, if I can treat something on the horn like it's a game, then I won't, you know, beat myself up. Oh, I just didn't hit that, you know, that high C or whatever. Right. It's just like, let's try to treat this like it's fun. Let's come at it like with some fun problem solving. And that's one of the fun parts about learning is treating things like a game. So when you entered college, how did you, like, when did you decide you wanted to pursue music professionally?
The story is somehow I got into All Eastern Band in DC. And I don't really know how, I don't recall how that happened. I know that was in All State, and then I guess my tape went, I don't know. And so I got into All Eastern Band, and I had been assigned the 4th horn part, and there were 16 horn players in the band. And one man was going to give you either chair 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Yeah. And so we auditioned all 16 of us, and I came out second. Instead of being on 4th chair, 1st chair, 4th horn, he put me second in the pile of 16. Wow. And so all these kids from New York City and Philadelphia and DC were saying, whoa, who do you study with? I went, Mr. Hooker, 10 minutes a week. You know? And at that time, my mom, of course, was with me. And Walter Beeler was standing over on the other side of the room. And he was the assistant dean at Ithaca College. But he had been my mother's band director at Ithaca College.
No kidding.
And so he came up, my mother introduced us, and he said, so I understand you're going to come and play for Mr. Covert next month. And I had already applied to Ithaca as a phys ed major.
No kidding.
So I changed my application and went into music. And I'm very lucky I went to Ithaca to study with Mr. Covert, because he basically took me from, I didn't have B-flat horn fingerings. I didn't need a B-flat. I had a double horn, but I didn't have a book with a fingering chart.
Oh my gosh.
And I could play those notes on the F horn. What did I need a B-flat sign for? Duh.
Oh, that's like, all right, maybe that's one of the secrets of your success is just the fact that you learned everything on F horn first. You know, do you still use F horn fingerings? Do you still practice on F horn?
Oh, I use both. I mean, that's when Mr. Covert said, okay, that's done. So then he would have me play all my scales, both on the F horn and B-flat horn, both sides, and go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. And another big person was Norm Schweikert. He was like, why are you using that finger? Why don't you use this other fingering? And it's not an alternate fingering. As Barry Tuckwell said, they're fingerings. Know your horn. Yeah. Know the harmonic series. Know what fingerings you can use. So that's a very big thing to know. To know, on the natural horn, if you have a certain partial, you know where you are.
I mean, I have to confess that when I went to Europe and I started playing the Alexander 103, my B-flat fingerings weren't as good as they should have been, and it was just, for me, I really had to knuckle down and learn those B-flat fingerings in the middle and low register. And then after, like a little while, it's just like, second nature. But yeah, for me, it's still like one of those things that now I'm like, oh, I'm putting out the B flat fingering. Oh, don't tell anybody. Like,
no, I think that's knowing your instrument, and many times, why are you playing it on the B flat side? Play it on the F horn. I have to say that to some students because it's the same idea, and you might find you have a better slur, or maybe you've practiced it on the F horn, and in the middle of performance, ooh, you're a little stiff. Oh, I guess I'm going to use B flat today. You should be able to do that. Sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right?
Just
So
like interchangeable.
on the fly, you should be able to just change it around.
Yeah, absolutely. So what lessons did you really learn from Morley Covert? I mean, obviously, I think the B flat fingerings were one.
Oh, Mr. Covert put me through etudes. I mean, because I had never had any.
Which ones did you go through?
Oh.
Which ones didn't you go through?
We did the preparatory melodies of Chantal.
Okay.
And we did the Chantal book, the theoretical scale society book.
Right here, right on my shelf.
Yeah, it's on I play it every day. And then we went through all 6 Maxi Malfonts. We went through the Barbato books. We went through the Reynolds book. We went through the Shane's book. We went through Dubois book and others.
Wow. That's a lot.
And solos, and a lot of solos. I did a recital junior year and 2 in my senior year, 2. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And we didn't practice excerpts. Wow. I never really did any excerpts with him until toward the end.
I think honestly, I have to say, I think that's a newer thing to teach excerpts in like, college class. It seems like a lot of students want to learn the excerpts from me, and it's like, hey, I didn't start learning the excerpts till like after college.
No, and when I came to Northwestern and studied with Frank Brock, it was you played your Maxi Malfonts 5.
Yeah.
For grad school, he was always having you play one of those, and then a solo, Mozart or Strauss or something, and then you played your excerpts. But it was always Bing, Bing, Bing. And Dan Gingrich's wife, Mary, was a student when I was at Northwestern.
No kidding.
And I think one day I had a lesson after hers with Mr. Brock, and she walked out shaking her head. And she said, look out, he's in that mood. I went, uh-oh. And I didn't know him that well. She had him many more years than me. I only had him like 6 months. And he was in one of these moods that you didn't miss a note. And you got down to the very bottom, the last line of that Maxi Malfonts book 5, and you missed a note. Sorry, you went to the beginning. And you didn't get off that unless you really played it perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Could you talk a little bit about Mr. Brock? I have this feeling like maybe some of the younger generation doesn't know of Frank Brock.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure most people do.
And I think for everyone in Chicago and everyone that's come through Chicago, everyone always talks about Frank Brock as being kind of just the greatest horn sound you've ever heard. And everyone still says like, hey, that's one of their inspirations on the horn. Dale says it.
Actually, that's what Phil Farkas said. Phil Farkas said Frank Broad had the best horn sound that he'd ever heard.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
And Dave Crable will say the same thing.
Okay, and Dave Crable was associate principal next to Farkas, in the 60s with a...
He was assistant, yeah.
Assistant.
And then at one point, after Farkas left, he and Frank Brock split the first book.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and then he went to Detroit. And then,
are there any recordings that you can say, like, just definitively, you're like, this is Frank Brock playing the horn that we could hear?
Well, there's a horn quartet album out there that you can hear him. But a lot of the older recordings before 74, Frank was playing second to Dale.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah, he was second horn.
Yes.
Gail came in. I believe you can ask Dale this for sure, but he was playing second horn when I first came to Chicago.
Yeah, I remember because there was a gentleman named Cliff, and I think Cliff passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clyde maybe? Clyde. Yeah, Clyde. And so Mr. Brow probably played
He went in the second, and he was there until Dan got in as assistant, and then he went to fourth and Norman moved to second. That was in 74.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the older recordings of like the first recordings of Mahler, that's with Frank. playing second horn.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mean like that opening of the Mahler 9 maybe with like a Gelini, or maybe the opening of Mahler?
Well, I don't know about
Okay.
that. That might
Okay.
be Norman.
Yeah, we'll check out some of those dates.
But that's the date you would have to look. Yeah.
So you studied with Mr. Brauk for 2 years at Northwestern?
No. I just studied with him for 6 months because then his daughter graduated from college and he quit teaching.
He just did it to his daughter.
I saw him from January of '74 to June. And then I took the fall off from Northwestern because I was playing extra at Lyric. And then I studied with Mr. Clevenger.
Did you?
Yeah.
You studied with, I didn't know that. No kidding.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I finished my master's studying with him. Yeah.
Wow. Man, okay, so wow, you really had some amazing teachers. You had Mr. Schweikert, you had Mr. Brauk, you had.
Well, Schweikert I actually studied with. I just sat next to him and learned from him for 20 years. However, I met Norman Schweikert at the second International Horn Workshop because he and my horn teacher Jack were at Eastman together and played in Rochester Philharmonic, and they were best friends. And so I met him when I was 18. Wow. So I knew Norman a long time. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge loss that he just passed away. But I have his book here. It's the Horns of Valhalla.
Yes.
This is a horn book written by Norm Schweikert, and if you can't see it because it's backwards, just know that you can find it on Amazon. It's called The Saga of the Writer Brothers.
Yeah.
And Norm was a huge scholar, wrote this book, and just really his warm-up is something that I would love to go through sometime. Do you have a copy of Norm's?
Oh, I can send it to you. I could find it on my, I know I have it because we kind of put it together when we did this celebratory concert, that you took part of, and thank you for doing that in November.
Yeah.
We had a couple of different people put their things together, and Randy put it together, and it's in the horn call. If you look at I think the last horn call, there was his first part of his Norman Schweikert series and it's printed out in the horn call.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Gail, you do a few different warm-up routines. You do? I know you've taught me the Dufresne routine.
Who was Frank Brauk and Phil Farkas's teacher? He was the first horn teacher at Northwestern.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a list. I have a list of horn teachers at Northwestern that Norman put together, and Dufresne was the very first one.
Unbelievable. And you also, so that's a book that's published. Tom
Bacon published it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, I believe have you done the Stanley routine at all?
Oh, sure.
And then tell me about the singer routine. Do you ever do that, or did you?
No, I did it a little bit when I was studying with Dale, and it made me stiff, so I took it out into my parking lot and burned it. I took it there. Wow. I burned it. Yep. It just went, that makes me stiff. I'm not doing that anymore. I remember exactly which apartment too.
No hard feelings.
It's like I have Frank Brauk's kind of through Dufresne, which is similar to Farkas.
Yeah.
And I do that. I do a lot of James Stamp.
Okay.
The Schlossberg, trumpet book that has so much variety. And I mean, when I was in the Chicago Symphony, I probably could tell exactly what time it was because of Norman's warm-up.
No kidding.
So it was, you knew it was 9:25 when he was doing a certain thing. However, that worked for him. It didn't work for me.
Yes.
But I did similar ones depending on what I had to play.
Okay. Yeah. So like, what would you change? Like, and why? Like, what would you, so like, say you had to do like a Mahler symphony, how would that change from having to do like a Mozart symphony? Like, what would you do differently in your
work?
Well,
it's interesting. I would be doing a certain kind of warm up if I was going to do Mozart symphonies.
Mm-hmm.
A very much more lighter, more flexibility. Um, Mahler, I probably wouldn't change my warm up so much as my practice. If I was getting ready to play a Mahler symphony, I would do more long tones and a little bit keep that mouthpiece on your face for endurance.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
interesting after, because I was always underneath the stage with Norman. There were four of us that were underneath. We had our spots, and don't you go near my spot, And it was Norman Schweikert had a spot, and Eddie Kleinhammer had a spot, and Tim Kent, the trumpet player, he had a spot behind the elevator, and then I came in, and I'd always start with mouthpiece buzz, and Tim Kent every morning would say buzz, buzz, buzz. So we knew the four of us were there. But after concerts, if I had to play Schubert Octet or Brahms Trio, and we had just been blowing through a Mahler symphony, I would go back underneath that stage and get ready for that concert.
No kidding. And what would that look like for you? What would
it would depend. If I've been playing really loud low stuff, I would go in the upper register and like get it focused back,
the
or if
opposite?
I'm playing really high stuff and I need to play Schubert Octet, which has got some of those low da 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 stuff, I would play down in that range and just kind of warm down and get flexible.
Fantastic.
And I think you have to know what you have to do, and that's the purpose of a warm up and a warm down, is knowing what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Through experimentation, that's all. And what works for me, but it may not work for you.
Wow.
Well, I don't have a set routine that I give my students because I think they have to experiment. I suggest certain things. You need to be doing a little bit more of such and such, but I think you have to find out what works for you.
Again, it's like, a set of clothes, right? Like my shirt
absolutely.
wouldn't fit the next guy's shirt,
Right.
and so I feel like everyone needs to try it on and say, okay, I need a little bit more of this. And I think the experience helps us decide what we need more of and what we don't need more of.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're playing a Bruckner symphony, you don't need to do long tones that week. You're doing them.
Yeah. Wow.
You may need to do a little bit more, light kind of articulation and different kinds of flexibility for the following week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But I know that I would be underneath the stage, warming up or warming down or doing something after a concert, and the door would crack open, and it was always Bud Herseth saying, cheat, and he'd slam the door.
Oh, man.
But that's what, on tours with the Chicago Symphony, there are so many memories of, first we had a foodies group, and we had it was Grover Schultz and his wife, Bev, and they both have unfortunately gone away.
Grover's the English horn player from the recording of New World Symphony with Levine. Yes.
That's Grover. And Bud and Avis and Larry and myself, and then Charles Kay and his wife, we always picked one place on tour, and we would research it for like a killer meal. So we called us the foodies.
Wow.
And so I had a lot of fun time with Bud. But, if I had something really important to play, I'd either play it for Bud or Jake.
Wow. Yeah. Man, I mean, that's just so much respect, but also you knew that those guys were doing it right. They knew how to do it right. And then also you really respected their opinion, and you knew that they weren't going to beat around the bush. They were going to tell you straight, this is what I hear, and this is where I would make improvements.
And you know what they would say? You're not 6'2". Why don't you phrase it to make it fit you? And that was one of the best things they both said to me.
Wow.
I'm not tall like Gail or Norman.
Yeah.
And you have to make it work. You have to make it work for you. And music is always something that you have to make fit your soul and your heart. Wow. And you have to make it work for you, or you're a fake. Not fake news, but just.
Oh, man. I mean, that's just such a great lesson for everybody out there. It's like, hey, I don't want to be like somebody else. I don't want to be like a copy of Dale Clevenger. I don't want to be a copy of Garrett Seifert. I want to be like the best possible version I can be of myself.
That's right.
And like what somebody else does physically, where somebody else breathes, might not fit me. And,
I've never had a doctoral student do this, but I want them to do my research. I think everybody's sound depends on how they actually learn to talk and where they're from.
100%.
And their their sinus cavities and everything make a big difference. And I never believed that until, and Dick Olberg would say, you can't really change your sound. I said, oh yes, you can. We'd argue a lot, but I think he's right. I think in some ways you can change equipment and change certain things, but
Yeah.
I'm from upper New York State and we learn to talk through here, And when I heard Renee Fleming say something about being in Rochester, I'm like, ooh, she says Rochester more like Rochester than I do now. But that's where she gets her resonance. And if anybody has resonance, it's Renee.
Oh yeah.
And so that's something that's really important. And that's something Dave Krabel would talk about. It's like, get the resonance off the top of your nose. He would say that in master classes, right here, bring it up here. And so that's bringing your air forward, and it's a good tool to think about instead of
just like a singer.
Yeah,
sure. There was this. This is gonna sound stupid, but Conan O'Brien had this series where he went around and he traveled, and he goes to Cuba, and he's trying to learn salsa dancing and salsa singing. And so he goes to he's just making, he's trying to be funny and hilarious, and so he's trying to imitate a salsa singer. And the guy's like, no, sing from your nose. Let the sound come out of your nose. And I was like, huh. And so that's like one of the things I've been thinking about with my horn playing is seeing if I can get the sinus, cavities to resonate and really, And I'll just, on to second that thought, the second horn player in Dallas Symphony, Haley Hoops, is probably from about an hour of where I was born. And so we talk pretty similar.
Yeah, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah, we're from Michigan. We talk about apples and bags. It's great. We're from Michigan. And so we talk about going home and, the sinuses, but our sound is so similar.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
When we play the horn. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why it worked so well for the two of us to play together for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really miss, playing with Haley. She could just match me like a glove.
Yeah. But it's interesting to have a little different. I mean, when I was first in the CSO, Dale played a Schmidt, Norman played a Schmidt, Dick Olberg played a Geyer, Dan played a Geyer, I played a Geyer, Tom Howell played a Geyer. Wow. But we were all a little different. But that's good. Yeah. Because then Norman's resonance would fill out part of Dale's, and Dan's would fill out another part of Dick's. And so it all made a bigger and more diverse sound, I thought. But the bell throat was the same. So it was like projecting similar.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's stuff. That's
so necessary. Yeah, I mean, that's the lesson to hey, we don't all need to play the same horn or the same year or the same vintage or whatever, No. It's I mean, right now
actually more interesting when they don't, I think.
Yeah, they kind of all interweave as opposed to all filling out the same, overtones.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I just so far as right now, I mean, the horns that we play in the CSO just seem to work in the hall, and they, there's something to be said about that hall not helping us so much.
Yes, and that's I was very fortunate to play a couple concerts with the Cleveland Orchestra a few years ago.
Yeah, could you talk about that?
Oh, it was fabulous, and with the same thing when I played with you guys down in Dallas, and then you played a different hall with a different orchestra, and you went, wait a minute, this is why this orchestra sounds the way they do. It's because of their hall.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. I mean, orchestra, you have to kind of lean in and direct it, and you have to put in length, and you have to put in that resonance because there is.
Yes. We have to put in resonance. That's where the sustain comes from.
Right. And you don't have to do that in Severance Hall. It's such a beautiful hall. You can touch it and it just goes. So that's a really different style of playing because of a hall, not just because of just the people there, but I think they adapted their playing because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great hall.
Well, I think the hall is part of our instrument, really.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so I remember I don't know which year I took the Cleveland Orchestra audition. Maybe it was 15, but I think I was playing my Lewis. And I went out and I said, hey, I play like I'm going to play, and I sound like I'm going to sound. And so I played my Lewis out there, and I just remember everything I was playing was just hot. It was right out of the gate. And then I came back in 2018, I believe, and I played my Con 8D, and it just worked. I was just like, oh, this is so beautiful. I don't have to force, and it
No.
just really, yeah. And there's a reason, they play that horn there.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel when you played with them? Did you make adjustments? I mean, obviously, like as a sensitive player, you're able to adjust, but
Yeah,
you just played ear.
I had to play my hill. I didn't change
Of
to
course, of
anything,
course.
but I just tried to maybe not push like I would at home
Hmm.
in my home hall,
Yeah,
and just listen like crazy. I just
yeah.
tried to blend as much as I could with the players, the horn players I was playing with, but with the woodwinds, and that was easy. That was really fun. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh man.
to play with
That,
those guys.
yeah, Frank Rosenwine is a good friend of mine, and we were at Marlboro together, and we were at Tanglewood together. So,
He's
yeah,
from Evanston.
is he really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. No
yeah,
kidding. Yeah, he's such a good guy, really,
yeah,
and he's just like the easiest going oboe player you'll ever meet.
yeah, yeah.
So, I guess some of the other like, what was it like when you joined the Chicago Symphony? Could you talk about your audition?
Oh, my audition. Well, I was in the finals with Dan. Dan and I were in the finals together in '74.
Wow.
And that's when I was a graduate student. I was still playing my 28D con. And I was just a graduate student. He was coming in from National Symphony. And that was hard because when we played with the section, I didn't match.
Yeah.
So it went back and forth a long time. And then he won, and I continued over at Lyric Opera.
Hmm.
And then in '78, when Frank Brock went to retire, boy, I really wanted that job.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit more pressure because I'd already gotten married to Larry, and he was in the orchestra, and I was next door over in Lyric, and I really wanted that job. And so I did everything I could. At that time, you didn't have great recording devices. You had one that you push and play.
Yeah.
I took a lot of lessons with Dick Oldberg at the time. And he said to me one day, "You're not practicing taking the audition." I said, "Are you nuts? I'm practicing like crazy." And he said, "No, you have to practice taking that audition." And that was the first time anybody had ever said, you sit down, you you pick out your excerpts out of an envelope or whatever you might know if the list is, and you set the recording device, you walk in, you play it.
Mm.
No two times.
Yep.
And then you go back, and then you become the committee. And you can do that like 10 times a day because it's only 10 minutes. It's not very long. So that really helped me a lot when Dick made me think about doing it like that.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
then I would play for Mr. Jacobs, and he really, everybody talks about the breathing aspect, but he was a great musician. He was a real singer.
Yes.
And he really went after me about the singing, especially things like Brahms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, interesting, you have to wait for Schulte to come. So it may be you take the audition in January, but you don't see the finals until May or something.
Yeah.
Actually, the preliminaries were on February 17th, my father's birthday. So I called him up. I said, "Well, made the finals." And then the finals weren't until May because I had to sign my Lyric Opera contract.
Wow.
So I signed it by the end of April, and then I took the audition in May. And in between, I was playing a Jerry Lechnick horn, which is a copy of a Geyer, of course. And I heard of a Geyer that might be for sale. So I had Larry ask Frank Brock, "Hey, Frank," because he worked with Geyer a lot. And I said, "Ask Frank if he knows this horn." And Larry was playing a Milwaukee concert that night, and he came back and he said, "Frank said, do you want mine?" Well, I could barely wait until 8 o'clock in the morning to call Frank and say yes.
Oh my gosh.
Because I had played his horn one time in a lesson. I was like, oh, so that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
So I went down that day and took my horn and his horn and everything, and we played, and he would just pick up the horn and go, "Well, this is fine. This sounds really good." It just sounded beautiful. And so I got his horn.
Oh man.
and it's sitting right over in my studio. And I walked into a lesson with Dick Oberg with these two horns, and he just reamed me one. Oh, what the are you doing? You know?
No kidding.
I
Why?
guess he was not happy. I said, I guess you're just going to have to sit and listen. So I played the opening of the Strauss on my Jerry horn. Then I played the opening of the Strauss on the Geyer, and he said, well, I guess you got to switch horns in 3 weeks. So I did.
So you switched horns 3 weeks before your Chicago Symphony audition.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that's like, all right, for anyone who doesn't know, like a horn becomes an extension of your body, and it'd be like walking with a different leg or like a different set of legs. You know,
Yep.
you have to know that horn so well that like you can just, you know, like shoot a free throw from half court and sink it and like, you know, do it with your eyes closed.
Yep.
You know, that's what a horn should feel like. And especially when you're playing an audition, that's like, wow, you're fearless.
So that's what I did, and it was the best decision to make.
Yeah, but you also switched mouthpieces before your senior recital.
Well, yeah, but I didn't know anything then. But, you know, I went from an MY9, which is an Alexander mouthpiece that Mr. Covert had a lot of people play, either the 13 or the 15 or the 9. And I had gone to audition for, no, it was my junior recital. I went to New York to audition for Tanglewood and went into Giardinelli and, oh, look at all these mouthpieces. And I started playing them out. Oh, this feels really good. And I came back with this mouthpiece, and Mr. Covert is, what are you doing? And it was a Giardinelli J6, which is good. It's like a big, the rim I actually play on now, it's the same. It's almost 85. It's an 18.5.
Holy smokes.
Width, and then, but it was a 6-bore.
Wow.
It was, and with James Staliano's mouthpiece.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know the J series. I knew the F series was Farkas.
Yeah.
The C series was Chambers.
There was a singer, and yeah, the
Oh,
J,
wow.
yeah. And so I still have that mouthpiece, and it's in my studio at school, and I pull it out once in a while and think, oh, what an idiot. But it's still, that's what, if I was going to play Wagner tuba, that is exactly the mouthpiece I'd play.
You still play a wider mouthpiece, like an 18? Yeah. So I guess the question that a couple of the students have written in questions, and one of the students was asking about wider lips, like fuller lips. And, you know, they said something about Einsätzen. I don't know if that makes a difference, but one of the students really wanted to know, like, how would you approach fuller lips, and especially fuller lips with a mouthpiece? Like, would you suggest a wider rim, or?
But they just have to try. I think that's when you have a variety of.
Is there a different approach for fuller lips? Like, would you recommend rolling?
I feel like I would say the rule of thumb, and it's not the only way, because there's never only way, but is to put the bottom edge of the mouthpiece on the edge of the red and rock it up and see where it goes.
Okay.
That's sort of my way I was taught, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you want to have as much lip inside the mouthpiece.
I'm going to grab my laptop really quick so I can get some of these questions. I'll be 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, so because a lot of students took some time to write in these questions, I want to make sure that we answer a few of them, or as many as we can. Okay, so we've talked about breathing and breath control. And we talked about the principal horn in Cleveland. We asked about Einsätzen. How to play high notes easier. That's the question, right? This student asks, how to play high notes easier? Breathing, enough tongue, or tongue position?
Well, I think there's not one answer, right?
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
There's not one answer. I explain it a little bit by if I were to, and I know Mr. Jacobs will be not happy right now, but if I was to go, very likely that would give me enough energy to play
Yes.
On the horn. So I double it. So if I play a G below the staff on a free buzz, that gives me a second line G. And if I play second line G free buzz that on my horn, that's going to give me a C, a G. You know,
A high G.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that we go too hard and too compressed and too pursed and everything else to go high. I think there's too much tension in the lip.
Yeah, I agree.
To go
100%.
high.
Yes.
So if you get that concept going of with the mouthpiece, I mean, I'm gonna grab my mouthpiece.
Okay.
My concept of mouthpiece buzz came from the very first time I ever played in the Chicago Symphony. I always had buzzed, but it didn't really hit me until the first time I was playing extra and was walking down the hall, and you don't have that hall anymore. It's sort of there, but it's not like the skinny hall that it used to be. And I was going down, and I was studying with Frank Brauch, and Mr. Clevenger had asked me to play assistant to him on Symphonia Domestica. Wow. It was like May of, and I had arrived in Chicago in January, so I was really new, and I was really scared, and I was really nervous, and I was like, what the heck am I doing here? And I'm on my con, you know. But I was walking down the hall, and I hear this sound like, holy mackerel, what the heck? And I turned around, and this is my first note of the day, unfortunately. It's Mr. Herseth going, you know, and just like the most intense buzz. And that changed my whole concept. I was like, okay, who has the most intense, beautiful, centered, efficient brass playing in the Chicago Symphony? But Herseth.
Yeah.
And I had many opportunities to visit with him and talk with him and ask him questions. And because I'm curious how people do things.
Yeah.
And because there's not one way. And he said, yes, he thought it was very important to have that free buzz. Wow. Not free buzz, but free buzz sound, you know, and a very resonant buzz.
Wait, you mean buzz with the mouthpiece, yeah?
Yeah. And so if you get tension anywhere in your chest, in your belly, or in your throat, you're not going to get a buzz out.
Yeah.
But if you release the tension, and if you watched him take a breath and breathe, boy, his belly went in.
Wow.
It went, you know. And that just changed my whole concept right then and there. So I've always thought, you know, before, and I don't have like, well, I have to do this exercise and that before I play. No, but I do use my mouthpiece like that as my practice tool, as Jake would say. It's a tool to be used.
Wow.
And yeah. So to play high, I also, I'm a firm believer that unfortunately some people can't, but I think you should be able to whistle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of your
using the way your tongue moves when you whistle. That's kind of how you play high, and it cracks it open up there.
Yeah.
But some people can't whistle, so I say, well, practice.
Yeah, that's the truth, right?
My grandson is 5. He can whistle. He's a really good whistler.
Oh man, and do you think he might be a horn player? We might have another Williams in the horn.
I don't know. He might be a trumpet player.
Oh yeah, he's got that personality. That like. I
don't know, because he grabs my horn. He has this perfect. You know, I showed a picture to John Bowen of him playing. And he says, "Look at those corners." I went, "I know." It's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna. No, we'll see.
Isn't that fun?
Got to get his permanent teeth in before you do anything.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. How are you keeping motivated during this time? And what's something that keeps you motivated? Those are 2 similar questions that we received from some of the viewers.
Well, because I still am doing my teaching online, which is not that much fun. I'm getting better at it. First
Yeah.
week it was really rough, and the first day I did 5 hours straight, and I thought I was gonna go crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's I think to I mean,
Gail, we lost you. Are you there? Sorry. Yeah, we just lost you there for a second.
am I there?
Yeah, you're
I'm
there.
gonna get plugged
You
in.
can
Plugged in.
you can switch
Just a minute.
wherever you're comfortable. I don't know. Are you holding the phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. That's perfect. Wherever you have it set right now, you don't need to hold it if you want to put it on a music stand or chair or whatever.
No, that's right. That's right.
Okay. You sure?
Luckily, Jim Stevenson, who is a wonderful composer in Chicago, came up with an idea of doing a new etude a day in May. Maytude.
Yes.
And that is keeping me like I can't wait to look at my email every day because I can then see something new to play.
Hey, Gail, are you recording these?
No.
You're not recording them? Okay.
No. I don't record.
I mean,
but I'm playing. I'm playing. But what I did last night, because yesterday was May 7th, and I got another one, right?
Yeah.
So I played May 7th, and I practiced it, and I read it, and okay. And then I played May 6th, then May 5th, and May 4th, and 3 and 2, and I ended with number 1. So that's what I'm going to do every day.
You're going to play all of them, and then
eventually. I played them all. So today I get to play 8.
No kidding.
We'll see how far. I'm just curious how far I could go. Maybe it'll be over 2 practice sessions. But last night after I finished, I did all, and it felt pretty good. You know, so it's keeping you in shape. It's keeping you reading. It's making you learn something.
Gail, how do we get those Maytudes?
Oh, you can. Well, on Facebook, you can find Jim Stevenson.
And we can just subscribe to him. We can order them through Jim's
you can,
website.
Yeah, you can go. You can find them at composerjim.com.
Okay.
Or James Stevenson composer.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll just message him if we want to get a copy of those. But
because it's $1 a day, so it's it's not terribly expensive, and they've been really fun.
That's what I'm going to do after I get off this chat. I'm going to message Mr. Stevenson and see if I can't get a copy of the Maytudes.
The first one is basically in honor of his father who passed away just recently.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So it's a little it's endurance. It's an endurance factor, right? But it's beautiful. I mean, Todd Barmester already sent me a recording of him playing it. Oh. And then you've got here goes what's the 4th of May?
Oh, yeah, Star Wars.
So you got a little Star Wars going. And then you got a little Cinco de Mayo, which is in a different key. So it's been very fun. So,
Gail, did you see all right, so there's a video of a student. I'll send it to you, but Fiona from Alberta, Canada. Yeah, she recorded the Cinco de Mayo one. And then, there's a guy in the background, her partner or, somebody.
Oh, I think I did see that.
And he's doing this with like gift cards and he's like, doing some sort of flamenco dance.
Yeah, I did see that. That's right. Yeah,
I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And then he gets tangled up in the curtain when he's spinning around.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah.
Oh,
that's keeping me going. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to start figuring out what I'm going to play my fall recital. And see what you think. And I don't have a lot of my normal music that I would play. It's in my studio, but I have a lot of music here that I haven't played, and that's Jack Covert's that he sent me when he retired. So I like many boxes of different material that's different. So is
there anything that's on your bucket list that you want to play that maybe you haven't played?
Not right off the tip of my tongue. I'm looking at the Margaret Brouwer Sonata.
Okay. Wow.
I think some of it's really, really, really beautiful.
Wow. Okay. One more question. You've shared some of your favorite memories of Bud. A student asked about, do you know Esteban? And this question must be for
I
Charles.
don't. No, I
Well,
don't.
we need to get you two together, and we could do like a lunch or a coffee with Esteban. And
When this mess is over, I'd love to.
man, he's really taking this quarantine seriously. I don't think he's set foot outside of his apartment, for the whole 50 some days. But I guess, do you have any advice for students that you'd like to share? Like any advice during this, for students during this time? Or
Well, I think during this time is the opportunity to learn something that you haven't had time to learn. So if you don't have a good lip trill, now's the time.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good double tongue, now's the time,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So there are hundreds of etudes and solos on ISMLP that you can dig into. And it doesn't have to be just horn related. It can be other things, like you played the other night, on our horn class. But
It's
that's
really...
what I'm looking at, that I think there's tons of material out there. And I think you need to keep your interest going. And is your sight reading good? Well, maybe if your sight reading's not good, then you practice it every day. Pick up something new, play it, and don't stop. And then go back and practice it. You know, so you're really sight reading. But I think that's an opportunity. Not many times. I have said this to other students in the past. I said, boy, I'd love to teach you during the summer when you didn't have ensembles. That you have to play something, you have to do this, and you have to do that. It'd be really great to just focus on other things. And now's the time.
Yep. Gail, some of the other things that I wish we had time to talk about, we're going to get cut off in about 3 minutes. Just could you talk a little bit about what you're doing for strength training and what you do to keep your body in good shape? Because I know you've always been a runner. You're doing Pilates.
I'm doing Pilates now. I used to lift weights a lot.
Yeah.
Not, huge weights, but I would see a trainer every single week for many years.
Yeah.
And he moved, and I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit. So that's when I kind of started seeing a person that did strength training and Pilates, and I really started liking the Pilates. So I see now a person every single week doing a individual lesson and then a class if I can.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm going to see her tomorrow online,
Awesome.
and an individual thing. I have gotten back into biking. When I was in the symphony, I used to bike to Ravinia. I would be mad if I couldn't bike.
No kidding.
Like, how dare it rain? I need a bike.
Oh my gosh.
House up to Ravinia and back every day. And now, when I go to Jackson, it is the same sort of thing. I bike. And out there you have trails, so you don't have to be on the road.
Wow.
I mean, riding down Sheridan Road is not the most fun thing to ever ride on.
Yeah, it's a little dicey, huh?
Yeah, it's a little dicey.
But you do that as a way to supplement your horn playing. And it also, because it helps our heads, it makes us feel better, right?
It helps your heads, it helps your air. You don't, do I do breathing exercises? No, I exercise. I have 2 German Shepherds. I have to walk them or they drive me nuts,
Yeah.
So whether I actually run anymore because of the amount of time I've spent on my knees, that they're saying don't run now.
Yeah.
But if I could go for a hike out in Jackson Hole today, I would be there in a second. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
And
Gail,
I've done some hiking, so it's like you got to keep adding to your repertoire,
Yeah. Man, thank you so much.
Right,
lastly, real quick before we end, could you just say why music and the arts are so important during this time?
It's what's going to keep your heart pumping.
Yeah.
It's your form of expression, but it's also something that's calming and healing. And I think it's really time for music for everybody.
Yeah.
And you'll find that. I mean, everywhere you go, people are saying, music is so important to me right now. And it may not be classical music, but maybe it's because they haven't listened.
Yeah.
But if you can listen to any beautiful chamber music or opera or anything, I actually think listening to non-horn music is really important.
Yeah.
Because it takes you someplace else instead of being with a critical ear.
Wow. Man, thank you so much for your time, Gail. It's so great to see you as always.
Thank you, David, for doing this. This is really great for everybody. for.
Yeah, you're one of my dear friends and one of my huge inspirations. So thank you again for being part of this Fireside Chat. And thank you all for watching. Gail, love you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, okay?
Bye.
All right,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Bye.